We talk a lot about Bitcoin as this game-changing technology, right? A whole new kind of money. But behind all that code, there's a story. And it's honestly one of the greatest mysteries of our time. It's about a creator who built something that could change the world and then just vanished.
I mean, if you go to the official source, bitcoin.org, the definition they give is super clean and simple. It's an innovative payment network and a new kind of money. It's all about peer-to-peer tech, which means no central bank, no big authority in the middle. The whole network runs the show. But that simple little description, it hides a really profound, really wild origin story.
And that entire story starts and ends with this one massive question. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? It's the name that was on the original white paper, but we know it's a pseudonym. We have no idea if it was one person, a group of people, a man, a woman, nothing. All we know is they were the architect of this whole thing. So after launching Bitcoin back in 2009 and kind of guiding it in the early days with a small group of coders, Satoshi sent his last emails in 2011. He handed over the keys to the project and then just, poof, disappeared from the internet. Gone. Now, this is where the mystery gets really interesting. Satoshi didn't just leave behind a cool project. He left behind a fortune. We're talking about an estimated 1 million Bitcoins that he mined in the very early days. Today, that's worth, well, tens of billions of dollars. And the craziest part? Not a single one of those coins has ever been moved. This wasn't some accident. This was a statement.
And you have to understand, this disappearing act wasn't a bug in the system. It was the system's final and maybe its most important feature. By completely removing himself, Satoshi made sure Bitcoin had no leader, no CEO, no central figure you could pressure or corrupt. It became truly decentralized, a system with no single point of failure. So to really get why that disappearing act was so genius, we've got to rewind and look at the huge problem he was actually trying to solve. And that brings us to the first big idea, the fundamental challenge of just creating digital money in the first place. And that problem has a name. It's called double spending. Think about it. With a physical dollar, you can't give it to me and also give it to someone else at the same time. Once it's gone, it's gone. But with digital stuff, a file, a photo, anything, you can just copy and paste it over and over. So how do you make digital cash that you can't just copy and spend twice? For years, the only answer was the model on the left, the traditional system. We all just trust banks to keep a big central ledger of who has what. But as Satoshi pointed out, that system has a lot of issues. Transactions can be reversed, the fees are high, and you have to give up all your personal data to merchants. What he proposed was a totally new model based on cryptographic proof, not trust, a way for me to pay you directly with absolutely nobody in the middle. So, how did Satoshi actually solve this massive problem? Well, that takes us to our next section, a solution built on proof. And what's so cool about this is that his genius wasn't inventing some single magical piece of new tech. His genius was in taking a bunch of existing ideas and combining them in a way nobody had ever thought of before.
Let's look at the key ingredients in the recipe. First, you've got a peer-to-peer network, kind of like how BitTorrent works for files. Then you have digital signatures to prove ownership. And then you have the two magic ingredients, a distributed timestamp server to put all the transactions in order, and this concept called proof of work to lock that order in and make it secure. And that right there is the key. The brilliance wasn't inventing all these individual parts. Ideas like proof of work had been floating around for years, but Satoshi was the one who saw how to weave them all together into this elegant system that finally solved double spending, without needing a bank or any central authority. It was the combination that was revolutionary. Okay, so we've got the tech. But that brings up a huge question, right? How do you get a whole network of strangers, people all over the world, to cooperate and play by the rules when there's no boss? This is where Satoshi's other stroke of genius comes in, which brings us to our third part, how the network stays honest. The core of it all is proof of work. See, Satoshi knew you couldn't do a one-person, one-vote system because anyone could fake thousands of identities online. So instead, he created a system of one CPU, one vote. Basically, your say in the network is directly tied to how much computing power you're willing to contribute. And here's the flow of how it works. When you make a transaction, it gets broadcast to everybody on the network. These nodes, who we call miners, they collect all these new transactions into a block. Then they all compete to solve a really, really hard math problem. That's the proof of work. The first one to solve it gets to add their block to the chain, and they broadcast it to everyone.
Everyone else checks it to make sure it's legit, and if it is, they add it to their copy of the ledger and start working on the next block. And that chain of blocks is, well, it's the blockchain.
This all sounds pretty foolproof. But what if somebody really powerful does try to cheat? I mean, what if some attacker with a warehouse full of computers tries to make a fake chain to spend their money twice?
This is where the economic incentive structure is just so clever. An attacker with all that power has a choice. They could try to cheat the system and reverse one of their own payments. But if they do that, they risk destroying everyone's trust in Bitcoin, which would crash the price and make their own holdings worthless. Or they could just play by the rules, use that same exact computer power to create valid blocks, and get rewarded with brand new Bitcoins. Satoshi designed it so it's literally more profitable to be honest.
So we've gone through the problem, the solution, and the incentives that keep it all running. Now for our final section, let's talk about the legacy of Satoshi, this new way of thinking about really big ideas, like privacy and innovation itself. Take privacy, for example. In the traditional banking world, privacy means keeping secrets. The bank holds your info, and you trust them not to spill it. Well, Bitcoin flips that completely on its head. Every single transaction is public. Anyone can see it. The privacy comes from the fact that your real-world name isn't attached to your address on the network. It's like seeing money move around, but you don't know who's behind the curtain.
But maybe the biggest legacy of all is the one that Satoshi lived by. He built this whole thing in secret, released it to the world as a finished project, and proved that one person, or one small group, can build a global system without asking for permission from any government, any bank, or any corporation. In one of his last public messages, Satoshi left us with this thought, which really captures the incredible ambition of what he was doing. He wasn't just building a little payment system. He was trying to create a whole new foundation for people to cooperate, based on math and incentives, instead of just trusting old institutions. And his story leaves us with one final, incredible thought. If one anonymous person could pull all this off, what else is possible?